Welcome back to Memory Lane Media, where stories aren't just told, they're felt. Today, we take a quiet walk through the final day of a woman who defied expectations, lived boldly, and inspired generations, Ruth Gordon. You may remember her as Maude, dancing freely through cemeteries in Harold and Maude, or as Minnie Castevet in Rosemary's Baby, stealing the scene with a single glance. But behind the applause, behind the iconic roles, there was a woman who, even at 88, still had fire in her spirit. And a story worth hearing, not for its drama, but for its tenderness. This is not just the story of how Ruth Gordon died. It's the story of how she chose to live until the very last breath. On the morning of August 28, 1985, Ruth Gordon awoke early in her beloved home in Edgartown, Martha's Vineyard. The island breeze drifted through the curtains, soft and salty, the way she liked it. At 88, her steps were slower, her voice quieter, but her presence still filled the room like stage lights warming a familiar set. Garson Conan, her husband and creative partner of decades, brought her tea as he had done for years. The world outside moved on with its usual pace, but inside that house, time had slowed to a more gracious rhythm. Ruth sat by the window with a stack of letters, handwritten notes from strangers who had become admirers and old friends who had never stopped writing. She lingered over one in particular, a young stage actress who had seen her in Harold and Maude and had written, "You taught me to be fearless with my choices." Ruth smiled faintly, holding the letter against her chest, eyes closed, as if letting the words settle into her bones. Moments like that had become her treasure, quiet affirmations that her voice had echoed far beyond the footlights. By mid-morning, a nurse helped her to the porch. Ruth chose the wicker chair with the blue cushion, the same one where she had spent countless hours watching the gulls skim across the sky. She wore a well-worn maroon sweater, glasses slightly askew on her nose, the picture of someone who had long ago shed the need for appearances. She had refused to go to Los Angeles or New York for treatment. "I'd rather hear the ocean than traffic," she had said. Garson sat beside her, leafing through their old journals. Pages yellowed by time, margins scribbled with laughter, heartbreak, ambition. He read aloud snippets of their younger years, naive declarations, moments of fire and self-doubt, dreams scrawled in midnight ink. "You wrote, 'Maybe now they'll stop asking me if I'm still auditioning,'" he said with a small chuckle. Ruth reached out, brushed his sleeve, and whispered, "I remember that dress." By early afternoon, she asked to rest. The nurse prepared the room with care, soft pillows, classical music playing low, a door left ajar to the world she still wanted to hear. That morning, John Houseman, a dear friend from the theater days, had arrived quietly. He left wildflowers by her bedside, careful not to wake her. When Garson told her John had come, she opened her eyes just long enough to murmur, "Tell him I remember his terrible cologne." That would be the last thing she said. At 7:45 p.m., as drizzle touched the island and shadows fell over Edgartown's narrow streets, Ruth Gordon passed away. There was no gasp, no final dramatic sigh, just a quiet slipping away, as though she had exited the stage without fanfare. Garson held her hand. The music played on. He sat still, surrounded by silence. But in that silence, there was no emptiness, only the echo of a life lived with fierce purpose. A few days before, she had confided to a visitor, "The hardest thing isn't aging, it's becoming invisible." She had fought against that quiet erasure with every breath. That morning, she had insisted on dressing herself, brushing her hair, and gently correcting the nurse's pronunciation of Chekhov. She left the world as she had entered it, on her terms, alert, defiant, full of soul. Her family declined a large funeral. Instead, a small chapel on the island held a gathering of old friends, fellow artists, and a handful of neighbors who had waved at her from porches over the years. Someone brought a tape recorder and played her Oscar acceptance speech from Rosemary's Baby. The sound wavered, but her voice still rang out, wry, proud, unforgettable. That evening, Garson returned to the porch. The wicker chair beside him sat empty, but her spirit lingered in the hush between waves. He held the letter from the young actress again, read it once more, then gently placed it inside Ruth's diary. No tears, just the kind of stillness that feels sacred. She didn't leave with a goodbye. She left with the quiet conviction that even the smallest moments, a note, a glance, a remembered line, could carry a lifetime's worth of meaning. Because in the end, Ruth Gordon didn't just act, she lived. Fiercely, bravely, without apology. And when the final curtain came, she stepped into it not with fear, but with grace. And that, perhaps, is the truest standing ovation of all. If Ruth Gordon taught us anything, it's that age doesn't dull the soul, it refines it. That even when the spotlight fades, a life well lived still glows in memory, in letters, in quiet mornings by the sea. Thank you for walking with us down this quiet, beautiful path. If this story moved you, share it with someone who still believes in the power of small moments. And don't forget to subscribe to Memory Lane Media, where the stories of yesterday remind us who we were and who we still are. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep remembering